Hello, everybody, and thank you once again for listening to the ESG podcast. I'm delighted to invite Mr. Rajeev Peshawaria, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Stewardship Asia Centre based in Singapore, and also President of Leadership Energy Consulting based in Seattle. Now, some of you hearing Rajeev's voice today may recognize him from some of the TED Talks that he's given, but he's also the author of the Wall Street Journal and Amazon bestseller, Open Source Leadership, and also Too Many Bosses, Too Few Leaders, a title I particularly like. And he's a regular contributor to Forbes. He constantly challenges conventional wisdom on leadership, management, stewardship, sustainability, and corporate governance. And he's pioneered unique practical concepts such as leadership energy and emotional integrity for personal growth, and the steward leadership model for driving sustainable business growth in the 21st century. And it's this last accolade that first attracted my attention to Rajeev. And we're going to talk a little bit in a moment about ESL rather than ESG. Before I ask Rajeev his first question, I'd just also add that he was formerly the Chief Learning Officer at Coca-Cola and Morgan Stanley, and has held senior positions at American Express, HSBC, Goldman Sachs, and at Goldman, he helped to found Pine Street, which is the firm's acclaimed leadership academy, and he headed Pine Street for Europe and Asia. And in his early career, he was a banker and a currency trader. Rajeev, we won't hold that last one against you, but thank you very much indeed for joining us from Singapore this evening. You talk about values-based leadership as part of ESL, with the L standing for leadership as a subset of steward leadership. How does that work in real life?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. To understand ESL, we need to take a step back and understand what steward leadership is. And I got worried about the following. There's $40+ trillion in ESG funds globally, and it's growing at a CAGR of about 12%. There's more than 100 countries that have passed very strict ESG regulations. And there are incentives galore for going green. And now the latest fad is also linking CEO compensation to ESG markers. So with capital, incentives, regulation all over, why aren't we making progress on any elements of environmental or social sustainability? So that's what I got worried about. And I started looking around as to why it's not happening. I said, well, let's turn the question around and look at companies and individuals who are actually making a difference to the environment and society. In fact, let's find companies that are making money by addressing the very existential challenges that are threatening us today. These are companies like the Patagonias of the world, the Tatas in India, the Faber-Castells in Germany. They've been for hundreds of years been successful. They're beating the markets in terms of growth, profitable growth, and longevity by addressing the very challenges that are hurting us today. And it turned out that they practice a different form of leadership, which is called steward leadership. And steward leadership, quite simply, is the genuine desire and persistence to create a collective better future, not just for the shareholder, but for society at large as well. So that's in a nutshell what steward leadership is. And hence we said, well, ESG needs to upgrade itself to ESL, because the ones that are actually trying to make the world a better place and making money by doing it are steward leaders.
Now, you mentioned Tata and Patagonia, just for transparency's sake. Are either of those two a client of yours?
No, they're not.
Okay, so for those people who haven't heard about Tata and Patagonia, just very briefly explain who they are and what they do and why you admire them.
Well, Tata is a conglomerate out of India. They're worth about $385 billion today. They are in everything from steel to software to hospitality to airlines, you name it. And they're a footprint in over 100 countries now. And right from day one, they have put society and environment first. Today we talk about ESG, but the founder, Jamshedji Tata, in the mid-1800s said, society is not just another stakeholder in business, it is the reason why business exists. And that we are in the business of solving human problems. The more we will give to the society and to the environment, the more our business is going to succeed. So that's the essence of Tata. Patagonia is a better known company that is, most people know about it, is the apparel company that talks about doing it right and not killing the environment by doing so. Both of these companies and the leaders in these companies started with an intentionality that, yes, we want to make money, but we want to make money by making the world a better place.
Now, that makes a lot of sense to most of us. The four stewardship values, I understand, are interdependence, long-term view, ownership mentality, and creative resilience. Can you elaborate a little on how one can implement these values in their personal lives as well as in their business lives?
So again, we looked at 100 such companies like the examples that I gave you, and we found that they all see themselves as stewards of planet Earth and humanity. They want to succeed and create wealth by solving human problems. And we found that besides that intentionality to do well by doing good, if you will, is based on their firm belief in these four values. So these kinds of leaders believe in interdependence, which is the idea that the more I give to society, the more I am going to succeed. My success and yours is intertwined. It's not a zero-sum game. They think in generations, not just in quarters and years. We found that they take ownership to solve human problems. Now, like you and me and everybody else, they want personal benefit, but they want to accumulate fame and fortune by solving human problems. So they take ownership of that. And they understand that running your life and your business with these kinds of values and to create a collective better future is difficult. So they firmly believe in creative resilience. They know they need to innovate to find profitable solutions to today's problems. And where the resilience comes in is that they don't give up, because with innovation, you fail 8 out of 10 times, and they keep good at it until they get it right. So the four values were common amongst all these steward leaders, if you will. And based on these values, they then gave themselves and their companies a purpose to create whatever collective better future they wanted to create for stakeholders, society, future generations, and the environment. So those are the four values. Now, how can you implement them in your personal life? That depends on your intentionality. You have to believe in them. You can't fake them. It's what you want out of life. If I want to make money and I want to do it at any cost whatsoever, I don't care about society, then these values are not for you. So it depends. Whether you implement these values for yourself or not, it depends entirely on who you are and what you want for yourself. I can tell you that these are not the default of the human brain. The default of the human brain is exactly the opposite. We don't believe in interdependence. We believe in our own self first. Long-term view, who wants to take a long-term view? I want the maximum benefit in the shortest possible time. I don't want to take ownership for problems. And hey, innovation is hard, so don't talk to me about creative resilience. I want the path of least resistance. So if you want to implement these values, you first have to answer the question, who am I? Why am I in the world? What do I want to give to the world? Then you can rewire the brain and adopt these values.
Well, I'm smiling only because we've actually had previous podcasters talking to us about authenticity and also purpose. We may revisit that in a moment. But I have a question regarding the individual personal life of us all. Do you think steward leaders are born or are they made? And how can organizations spot these people within their own organizations?
Allow me to play with words a little bit. A leader is born, but not at the time of her biological birth. And that's certainly true for steward leaders. So a steward leader is born, but not at the time of her biological birth. The leader in you is born when two things happen simultaneously. One, you feel deeply about the inadequacies of current reality. And two, you decide to do something about it. That's when the leader in you is born. A roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is, are they born or made? I don't know. They're definitely not made at the time of their biological birth. Can anybody wake up to steward leadership? Absolutely, if they want to.
It does sound tough.
Oh, it is. It is. Because when you want to make your life matter, most people spend their life on this planet maximizing net worth. How much more can I accumulate? What can I get from the world? When you change that orientation to what can I give to the world? How can I make my life matter? In other words, change your focus from chasing net worth to chasing life worth. It is tough. It is hard. Now your life becomes much more harder because you have to work that much harder. But people who wake up to the possibilities of steward leadership willingly take that hardship on them, because for them, there is no other way, because they've seen a picture of a collective better future that they want to create, and that gets them excited. Because that purpose of creating that collective better future is bigger than themselves.
So would you say it's relatively easy for organizations to spot people like that in their own businesses, or do you actually have to hunt them out?
So, like I said, these steward leadership values and this idea of creating a collective better future is not the default wiring of the brain. So I think the first thing that organizations really need to do is to educate their people on what leadership is. And the theory of leadership shifts every 40 to 50 years if you go back in history. And today we live in times of existential challenges like climate change, socioeconomic inequality, and cyber vulnerability, which if they remain unsolved, we might not have a planet or its people. So today, the model we need is steward leadership. We need people. Yes, there is nothing wrong with personal ambition. That's the human grain. We all want to be personally successful, but be successful by addressing these challenges. That's the need of the hour. And the biggest challenge of the 21st century for businesses is to find innovation enough to find profitable solutions to these challenges. So yeah, the organizations will need to provide that education to everybody, and then a few people within their ranks will wake up, not everybody.
Now, you must meet a lot of leaders as part of your work. In your opinion, who are the leaders who are currently embodying the values that ESL stands for? And what do they think at the human motivation level? How do they act and communicate this vision on a tactical basis? And I suppose the next...
I can tell you that there are quite a few leaders who embody the spirit of steward leadership, but steward leadership is not a permanent state. Just because a leader at one time talked and acted and behaved like a steward leader doesn't mean that they're going to be one forever. So it's not constant. I mentioned Patagonia, Tata, another company, Faber-Castell, which has been around for 270 years in Germany, Unilever. Many leaders at such companies have been steward leaders. Now, as I said, what do these people look like? How do they act and communicate like? They, at some point, understand that life is about maximizing life worth. That I am on this planet for maybe 80 to 100 years. What's my life going to matter? Can I leave behind a positive legacy? And there is no conflict between that giving orientation to maximizing your own personal worth, because now we know beyond doubt that the more you give, the more you get, right? So they have somewhere down the line decided that they are going to make their lives matter. And then they work very hard to say which part of the sandbox am I going to play in, which human problem am I going to solve. By the way, if you look at the history of wealth creation, ultra amounts of wealth were created when an entrepreneur was able to put his or her finger on the most pressing human problems of the time and find profitable solutions for doing so. So we're not saying don't make money. We're not saying don't have personal ambition and become a saint. No, by all means, have personal ambition. And these people are very ambitious for themselves. But they know that to achieve their ambition, they're going to have to make the world a better place. That's who they are. And then once they get the story, a classic example from recent history is Nelson Mandela. He decided that when he became president of South Africa, the average Black person that voted him to power wanted revenge against the white population. But he said, no, I believe in forgiveness and reconciliation, and that's what I'm going to do. Even though his own wife and daughter left him, but he still didn't flinch. Those are my values. I am going to stick by them, because the collective better future that I'm imagining is a rainbow nation. And so once they have that picture clarified in their heads, then they go about attracting the energy of other people to join them. And that's how they create the magic that they create.
I think that's clear. You're also clear that we should be thinking beyond regulations when it comes to sustainability. And having said that, how would you reimagine these regulations? And this is the ESG podcast after all. Do you think G, for example, is something that we should stop or change and make it L?
No, so I say that G must upgrade itself to L. That means that in the boardroom, in corporate governance, you have to think also like steward leaders. We definitely need governance. Now, when you say reimagine regulations, I don't think we need to reimagine regulations. Regulations are regulations. We have to comply with them. What I mean by going beyond regulations is to do more than what the law asks for. We are throwing a lot of regulations at the sustainability problem, whether it's climate or social, right? But here are the limitations of regulations. Regulations set the minimum basic standard of good behavior. If you do worse than this, we will send you to jail. Regulations do not maximize good behavior. What we need today is innovation to find affordable and profitable solutions to climate change, inequality, and cyber vulnerability. And regulation, there can be no regulation or law that says thou shalt innovate more. So what I mean by going beyond regulation is, by all means, you have to follow the law of the land, but give yourself the ambition that I'm going to go beyond and create profitable solutions by maximizing my good behavior, not just by minimizing my bad behavior.
So I think that you make a fantastic point that it's minimum standards of behavior rather than maximum standards of performance. What advice then would you give to business leaders who are looking to enhance their organization's sustainability efforts, but are facing challenges either from workforce colleagues or shareholders?
Yeah. So you see, here's the thing. It depends on how they are looking at sustainability. If you are looking at sustainability in the way that the majority of people look at it, which is it is a cost problem, it is a compliance problem, it is a risk problem, right? Then you lost the battle before it even started. According to the World Economic Forum, climate change alone offers $10.1 trillion a year of new business opportunities by 2030 and 395 million new jobs. So the first step is to look at sustainability as an opportunity. People ask, what's your net zero strategy? I say that's the wrong question. The right question is, what's my money-making strategy for the next 10 years? How the world is changing, and the big change is climate change and social inequality. How can I understand these pain points and convert them into growth, profitable growth opportunities? So that's the first thing you need to do, which is to change the mindset, right? Secondly, as far as investors are concerned, as far as employees are concerned, they need to get paid. They need to get returns. And you need to therefore show them a strategy. When Paul Polman took over as CEO of Unilever and remained CEO for 10 years, he provided 290% return to shareholders during his 10-year tenure. And he did that by creating a sustainable living plan. He got Unilever out of businesses that were bad for the environment, even though they were hugely profitable. For the first 2 years, share price tanked, market share tanked, profitability tanked, but then the magic started to happen. The board supported him. What I'm trying to get at is he showed the board and the investors, hang with me, this strategy based on sustainability is going to make you more money. So first, you need to decide that, are you going to look at sustainability as a cost, compliance, or risk problem, or are you going to look at it as an opportunity? Second, get the strategy right. And finally, build an enabling culture, a DNA where everybody in the organization thinks society and environment first. So it's a combination of heart and head, but just having a good heart that I want to do good by the world is not enough. You need to have a very smart head in terms of strategy to find profitable solutions as
well. What's the saying? Anything that came easy isn't worth having. Yeah,
absolutely.
I have a final question for you, Rajeev. I could listen to you all afternoon. I really could. But I have one last question, which is, how do you see sustainability as a wider endeavor play out in the world over the next few decades? Paint us a picture of what you think the future holds, please.
Look, the fact of the matter is, if we don't solve for climate change and inequality, and if we don't get what's right and wrong about technology, we're doomed, right? And the numbers are pretty scary. We're moving in the opposite direction from the 1.5 degree warming that we are talking about. Inequality, get this, the richest 1% of the people in this planet own twice as much wealth as the remaining 99%. And we still don't know whether AI is going to make our lives better or worse. So we need to solve for these issues. That's a given. There will be two types of people and two types of organizations, those who get it and those who don't. And it's as simple as that. And the majority of the people, I can tell you, will not adopt steward leadership. Why? Because doing so is hard, as we talked about earlier, and it's against the human grain of short-termism, not taking ownership, etc. But 80% of the people will not believe a word of what I've just said is actually good news. Why is it good news? Because the remaining 20% will come in and want to be steward leaders, and they are the ones who will save the world. And eventually, as in history, every time the human race has faced things like recently the pandemic, or before that famines and many other challenges, humanity has risen above and succeeded in saving planet Earth. And it has always been the 80-20 rule. 20% of the people create 80% of the magic. So if 2 out of 10 people adopt steward leadership principles, which I'm pretty sure they will, eventually I think we will be in a better place and we will defeat climate change and inequality and other things. So I'm not an optimist. The road is not going to be easy. I think it gets worse before it gets better.
What a great point to end on. Here at the ESG Foundation, we're also optimistic for the future, recognizing that there are some bumps in our way to get to that future. Just before we go, let me give the listener a plug for a new facility that we've got on the ESG Foundation's website. It's called the ESG Reporting app, and it's aimed principally at owner managers, people who are wrestling with all sorts of issues at the controls of their organizations. And if you would like an ESG strategy but think you haven't got the time to actually devise one, let me ask you to go to the ESG Reporting app on the website. It's free to use. It's very basic, but it will give you the idea relevant to your business, whether you're a hairdresser or perhaps you own a garage. It will make you think, what is relevant for my organization along the lines of reporting against E, S, and G objectives. And if you need some extra support, the foundation has lots of volunteers who can give you a hand. Thank you ever so much for that. It's fascinating. And if people haven't listened to your TED Talks, perhaps after listening to you today, they will do. Thank you very much again for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.